What's going on, everybody? It's your boy Spencer. I'm here with Kevin.
Yes, I'm here.
We're talking Batman. If my connection stays, who knows if it'll last that long? But do you want to know what I'm? First of all, do you want to know what I'm playing? You know, when I do these video reviews, I always play a video game in the background. Could you possibly guess what I'm playing? It is
Bubby's
Batman
Big Day.
related. I will
Oh,
tell
I
you
was about
that.
to. I was trying to find a really obscure video game name. I just got
I
out
said
of the
it. This
shower,
is an
man.
this is an obscure video game. I'll tell you that right now. But it is a Batman game.
Is it the Batman for the Game Boy Advance?
Now it is the Batman Begins PS2 game, the movie
That's
tie-in
pretty
that came out
obscure.
a very long
That's
time ago.
pretty obscure. I wish there
Yeah,
would be a movie tie-in for this game for this movie. Or
it's a
there
dead
was a
genre,
tie-in game
dude.
for this movie.
It's a dead genre. People don't make movie tie-in games anymore. Remember the Transformers tie-in game, dude? Literally every movie,
That
I
was
guess you could
awesome.
say, pretty much had one. It was they weren't great, but they were great like blockbuster rentals. It's a shame that they don't exist anymore.
All right,
But we're
Spence,
talking about
the
the
Batman.
Batman that just came out. You've seen it like 50 times. I saw it for the first time.
I've seen it 3 times now, I think.
What's all right? Movie reviews.
Yes.
Well, let's
You
where
know
do we
when you
start?
watch a movie.
I want to start with the score. I feel like it's a random place to start, but that's where I want to start. I feel like the music at the beginning of the movie was fantastic. It was really, really good. I felt anxious, but it's because that's what the music made me feel like, and I think that's a really important thing in movies. As it went on farther and farther, honestly, I wasn't a big fan of the score, but the beginning hour,
Interesting.
great.
Interesting. The score was probably one of the things I was most anxious for when I was like thinking about like my expectations for this movie, because obviously The Dark Knight is the cinematic gold standard for Batman, and so I think anything that's kind of associated with those three films is kind of associated with as the standard for Batman, and so going into this one, having Hans Zimmer's Dark Knight score in mind, I was going to be like, oh, it's going to be really hard for them to kind of like top that. But it went in such a different direction of just like, well, it didn't go in a completely different direction. It relies heavily on a lot of motifs and a main kind of motif for each character. And I think that may be why you didn't like it, is that it kind of may have seemed repetitive. But it for me it kind of helps make the movie overall more thematically resonant, and I think that was like one of the biggest things that I came away with this movie thinking, is that like it establishes its themes very very early in the film, and does a really good job sticking to them throughout the fucking 3 hour runtime.
Yeah, it is a long movie for sure. It is 3 hours. I wanted to say like I don't think it's bad necessarily, but I felt like the music makes you feel emotions, and I think randomly, I think that's what Rocky does so well, and that's what made it such a classic movie. Is that the music tells you how to feel, and your body will respond because your body has involuntary responses to certain sounds. I think, and that's how I felt in that first hour, especially in those beginning scenes. I was like really antsy, and I just feel like
it's
it kind of lost that luster as it went on.
It's funny how we like go about reviewing these, because I think our perspectives are wildly different when we watch them together,
Mhm.
like for these reviews. Um like that was your first time ever seeing anything the Batman related. I don't know how you
Yeah,
do it, but you're very good at avoiding marketing, and like you have not you
yeah.
knew
I don't
nothing
watch movie
about this
trailers.
movie. You knew nothing about this movie walking into it. And so like that, like I think that plays into how you experienced a lot of that stuff, because like I get what you're saying as far as just like it kind of makes you feel captive in a way that it forces these kinds of emotions onto you because of like the way that the movie is set up, or the way that a scene is set up. And I feel like as you watch it, you see like once you get over that, like obviously that's not a feeling that it's going to be able to like a film is going to be able to replicate every single time you watch it. For me, the second and third times watching this in theaters was just like, this plot is so dense, and it's so like all of these events they rely on each other being set in motion for them to be able to like hit their mark. And I think that's the first time with like a plot has seemed so coherent in a Batman movie, because
No, yeah, no, I
like
totally agree.
we were talking about it as we were leaving the theater. Like, again, the Dark Knight trilogy is the gold standard for on-screen Batman, and uh, the way Christopher Nolan approaches filmmaking is like, pushing the envelope of what is possible to depict and commit to the big screen. And I think, that has its drawbacks, especially, but was able to give us three spectacular movies in his trilogy. Um, this was a very kind of like toned down, like, let's look at the elements of Batman that we can kind of use to tell the best possible story in 2022. And I think they nailed that. Like, it felt
Yeah.
different from The Dark Knight in a way that was like, oh, they're really committed to every little aspect of what they're trying to do here.
Yeah, and so this kind of, I think, connects to a bigger conversation about superhero movies, and like people have really big problems like about certain characters, like if they're the correct race if they were in the comic book. Like these are real issues, by the way. I'm not just saying that to say
These
it.
are
Like,
things that people actually complain about. Yes.
yeah, like
It may sound
uh,
absolutely ridiculous, but it is true. People do complain
but
about those kinds of things.
but the like police Gordon, or yeah, Gordon was like he was African American. Normally, he's depicted as a white person. You know what I'm saying? Like, and I think this movie proves once and for all that we can just finally get rid of all of that, and that he was the like Gordon of Batman. Like he
That was
acted,
Jeffrey Wright is the Detective Gordon to me, or Lieutenant
yeah,
Gordon.
and it's just like the characteristics of that person stayed true, even though they may have looked differently. Which again, I've always been kind of part of that. Like that's the dumbest idea ever. It's like, and the epitome of that to me was with the Little Mermaid movie or something that's coming out, like a live action mermaid movie.
Halle
Like
Bailey is going to
how,
be the Little Mermaid.
yeah, okay, are you gonna argue about the race of a mermaid? Like that is that what we're doing now? So I'm just really happy that they did that, and like the casting was fantastic. The fact that Marconi, like is that his name, the main villain of it was all I could see him in is Transformers, because I think that's the last time I seen him on
He was
screen. So
underneath the
I kind of
enemy
had a hard,
scrotum the entire
yeah,
time. The entire movie, he was underneath the enemy scrotum.
yeah. But no,
John
he was really
Turturro
good.
did a
And
really
then
good job.
I guess we can talk more about the actors, now might as well. We'll start with Robert Pattinson, who a lot of people were look. There's a lot of discourse about this movie before it came out, and people are saying that it was going to be bad. Like that for me, at least from what I heard when it was first announced, everyone's like, "This is not going to be a good Batman movie." Blah 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 blah. He's not meant to be Batman, but dude, he killed it. I mean, this is the best. I'll just say it now. This is my favorite Batman movie that's ever existed. So,
I don't
and I
know.
was,
I feel like
he doesn't necessarily. What's up?
no. Go ahead. He
I
doesn't
just want to
necessarily feel
say
what.
that yeah, he doesn't necessarily look the role of like the eccentric billionaire, because I feel like that's kind of been like a really big, pressing point for all the other Batman movies. Christian Bale, just the stereotypical. I'm not saying that Robert Pattinson's ugly, but you know what I mean. He's just Batman normally has a very big build, and Robert just simply doesn't. But I think they kind of mask that very well by saying it's year two. He's still building his strength a little bit, so that kind of makes a little more sense. The other Batman that we've seen, other than Christian Bale's Batman, where we saw him come from the beginning, but when we look at the Ben Affleck Batman, he's at the end of his tenure. He's kind of beefed up because he's been doing it for such a long time. Again, I think the character took a very different approach just in general. He wasn't this. He wasn't necessarily the superhero Batman. He was like the Batman that was like just trying to figure it all out. And we haven't seen that too often. Like just in any Batman story, I feel like I think a lot of Batman discourse is about the future parts of his, not the beginning part, and the detective part also. Like the original like Batman idea, I think was like Detective Batman, and we got to see a lot of that, which is a totally different look. But I loved it, man. I just think I loved the way that the plot just moved along slowly, but never so slowly that I felt like it was slow. Like it was just focused on different things at different times, and I was just amazed by that. And I thought Robert, just played this like bitter Batman, this bitter Bruce Wayne, and he kept that until the very end of the movie, until you saw this great character development into the last like 30 minutes, which was really cool.
I really like. We've gotten into this kind of cadence with Batman of, we understand the pillars of the character he is, and I think this movie was the perfect like time to kind of switch that up, because even going back to like the 90s, the Batman that like the Bruce Wayne that we were seeing was like a certain type of Bruce Wayne. It was like the one that like had the perfect balance between
Mm.
using Bruce Wayne as a means to further Batman's agenda and vice versa, you know? And so like I feel like that's kind of I feel like there was always a opportunity there to kind of play with the balance between being Batman and being Bruce Wayne. And I think that the way this movie addresses that balance was very interesting, especially like when you think about like doing future movies in this story. Uh like Batman, like this is a Batman that is not concerned with being Bruce Wayne whatsoever. And I think I think when you take an element that I think a lot of people kind of maybe not be, you know, primarily focused on or hyper focused on when they watch these movies, like when they watch Batman movies, is the element of Bruce Wayne. And I think when you like he spends most of this movie as Batman, which I think is
Yeah.
really, really cool. Because he is deprived of, and not because it's just him because he's like running around as Batman for most of the movie. That's not the point. The point is that there is a specific absence of him being Bruce Wayne, and the movie keys in on that. That he would rather like dress up as Batman and like you know try and save the city that way than to like have a symbiotic relationship, do Batman and do Bruce Wayne. And I think by the end of the the events of the film, that is like that's a newer possibility for him having an understanding that like uh this city, this Gotham City is so wildly broken that it's not gonna like no one entity is going to be able to save it. It has to be like a collective effort. It has to be an effort on Bruce Wayne's end. It has to be an effort on Batman's end. Like that, like I think that what I like about this is that it's so thematically resonant. Um, you have like I think in the Dark Knight trilogy you have these kind of established ideas and you build them up in specific characters. You build up ideas in Batman, so where Batman represents certain ideas, the Joker represents certain ideas, Bane represents certain ideas, and you have them all clash. And that's how that's how you kind of address the themes in the Dark Knight movies. But this is like there are kind of elements that are ingrained deeply within the story, political corruption, justice versus vengeance. Like those are the kinds of themes that I think they did a really, really good job just weaving into every little aspect of the movie. To where you really can't turn and look to a different part of it, even in this 3 hour movie, and find me something that doesn't loop back into like the overall message. And that's what I really, really appreciated about this movie.
Well, yeah, you touched upon Gotham, and thinking back, like Gotham has only been a reference for the majority of these movies. Even Christian Bale's Batman, kind of like in Bane, you kind of saw a little bit at the football theater, kind of talking about like the voice of the people. But this movie was about Gotham City, which I think was a really like awesome take on it. Like the city is an integral part, and the people like that live within it also do. Like I said, the Bane movie kind of was one of that really lied heavily on that. But other than that, it just felt like the city called Gotham, and especially when we talk about Batman versus Superman, Gotham basically doesn't exist other than a
The
name,
the
which
thing
is kind of
about
unfortunate.
the thing about Gotham is that like in the Dark Knight movies, it definitely becomes more of a setting to where it's like there are moving parts going on. But I think the biggest thing is that Batman is the catalyst that gets a lot of those parts moving. And in the Batman, this year's Batman, uh, there is shit that happens in this movie that has nothing to do with Batman. Like there's stuff that happens in this Gotham City that predates Batman, predates anything that has to do with Batman. Obviously, there are all roundabout events and sequences and consequences that lead up to, Batman existing. But the fact that there are characters in this world that they've built that kind of have their own agency, they do their own thing. It's like uh not everybody gets like their full kind of roundabout conclusion in this story either. Like the Penguin, at the very end, you see, a shot panning on the Penguin, looking over the city, understanding that, like implying that, there's going to be a power vacuum due to the events of the film. And, the Penguin is, based on how we've seen, throughout, how he's moved throughout the film, up to that point, we can reasonably assume that he is going to be the kind of person to try and take advantage of that power vacuum. And those are the kinds of things that just like, you set people up and they have these motivations. They all have their different, interpretations on events that touch multiple parts of the story. And I think that that is kind of just a symptom of just really, really dedicated world building. They really wanted to create a really lush sandbox where these characters could really flesh themselves out in. And not only do I think they did a good job of that in this movie, but like there's going to be TV shows and obviously sequels that play off of this continuity, and I'm really excited to see more of this Gotham.
Oh, me too. And another thing I like about this Gotham is that in other Batman movies, like bad stuff simply just happens to Gotham. But in this movie, the bad stuff happens to Gotham because of the people who run it, and it runs really deep. So it feels like an impossible situation where, yeah, you can try to like take down the system, but then like there's nothing left. Like it's to that point where it's so bad that it's like, do we even really want to take these guys down in the proper way? Because then the faith of these people are essentially just done for. And then of course it just collapses upon itself anyways. But I also enjoyed those like very complex. It's not just like this guy's a bad villain. It's like we got to take this guy down. It was way more than that. And it also related back to the Bruce Wayne manor, which are like the Wayne like mansion and like the whole family too. So it wasn't just like his parents died randomly in an alleyway. It also kind of relates to the story too, which I think was a unique perspective.
I think what has always been difficult to kind of stick the landing on when it comes to Batman films, especially like in modern times, is like creating a need for a Batman to exist. I feel like when you look at past movies, the villains are monoliths. Like if you take out the villain, you take out the problem. In past Batman movies, and obviously it's not as easy as that. The plot intricacies of all of these of the past Batman films, it's not that cut and dry, but essentially like when you take out the bad guy in a Batman movie, the problem is done. And that is not the case in the Batman, because he gets his ass whooped. Like if we were keeping score in that movie, Battinson was getting smoked by Paul Dano Riddler, like absolutely beasted on up and down the board. Because if we look at the chain of events, he fails to prevent any Riddler murders, and the Riddler is able to like execute on his grand plan until the very end, where they don't kill the mayor. Like, and so I think what I liked about that was that it wasn't like this monolith. Batman does save the day at the end, like he prevents everyone from in the situation from dying. And that is awesome, and it's a triumphant moment. But it is still like, and what I really like about it is that the movie doesn't kind of reflect or bask in that triumph much at all. It actually reflects upon like the failures that led up to that point. And that is one of the biggest things that kind of like made itself of like that kept me engaged throughout the film, is that watching this Batman, I was thinking like, oh, this is a Batman that is very misguided, because you're not vengeance. Batman is not vengeance. Like Batman represents vengeance. And Batman is vengeance for those who cannot, exact it for themselves. But he himself is not vengeance. Like Batman, Bruce Wayne is not vengeance. He's hope, and for him to kind of shun the responsibilities of being Bruce Wayne, and to say that he doesn't care what happens to him, as a result of any of these, events, that displays to me that this person is going to learn, do some hard learning throughout the course of the movie, and that's exactly what he did, because of I think those not character defects, but simply character traits. I think those lend themselves to how he fights the Riddler and gets his ass kicked. And like I said, it doesn't bask in the triumph of saving the day at the very end, but it's very reflective in that, like, for the Batman to continue to exist, he needs to change. He has to have a different outlook on what it means to be Batman. And I really, really like that that story thread got looped at the end. That could have been something they saved for the sequel, but they gave us that kind of that closed thread at the very end for this movie, and I think that's what's going to help it stand against the test of time. Like, as I watched it throughout the week, it opened, like, it only got, like, the viewing experience only got better for me. So I can only imagine how this movie is going to age.
Yeah, the whole movie was really about defining what Batman's role is. I mean, the very first scene in the movie, he says, "I'm vengeance," and then the end of the movie, he's like, "That's not exactly what I am. It's actually something much more important than that," and that's beautiful. And he earns that feeling. Like, there's a lot of events in the movie that make him feel that way. It's not that he suddenly changes his mind. He's like, "Oh yeah, like this isn't exactly what I'm going for.
It is
I'm
proven to
changing what it
him.
means."
He is
Yeah,
proven wrong. Which is
painstakingly proven wrong.
which is like, and it's hard, like, and I like this Batman. It's a, you know, in the past you see a Batman that is like, he's kind of forced to look at the corruption of the city. He's looking down on the corruption of the city, and this Batman, I just like how integrated it was to the overall story, because the corruption of Gotham City is the reason in this story why Bruce Wayne is an orphan. Like, it is alluded to in the movie that Carmine Falcone had the Waynes murdered, and it's all part of the political corruption that pervades Gotham City. And so I think having, like, again, it just, like, it gives itself a really good reason to exist. Like, the Batman has a good reason to exist in this Gotham City because the corruption of it predates him, and it is, like, foundational in Gotham, like the
Yeah.
contemporary Gotham City. Like, you have to uproot all of Gotham City in order to be able to change that. And I think by the end of this movie, like, when we first meet Batman, he's like a doctor trying to, like, find, like, the cure for Gotham. Like, he's taking notes on his escapades, like he's a doctor observing a patient, and I think by the end he recognizes that, like, the thing that he thought he had, the cure he thought he was administering was actually creating more issues. And I like they don't let him off the hook for that. A lot of the things that happen, a lot of the bad things that happen in this movie are Batman's fault, because he, for various reasons, because he fails to act in time, or because he is too caught up in the vengefulness. Like, this is a very flawed Batman, and I think it's a movie that revels in his flaws and uses them to kind of push the whole story forward, not just the character.
You
It's
ready for
fucking
Into the
fantastic.
Batverse with
Yeah, I
Ben
am.
Affleck?
Yeah, Keaton. Yeah, give me
Yeah.
the Keaton, Batfleck and Pattinson all doing the fucking point, because we know Bale's not suiting up again.
No. Okay. So I want to transition to the action portion of the movie. It's worth mentioning. We haven't seen a lot of gadgets from Batman, just in general. He's got a fucking arsenal of like shit to just do whatever. And that's a part of Batman that I feel like has been lost in a lot of all of this. And I think Adam West Batman obviously was like a bit of the originator of that idea, although it's been in the comics for a long time. But dude, he was just throwing whatever, and it was all in his belt, dude, for in any situation. I think I love that part.
I think in, like, the past couple Batmans, it's just been like, dude, he will just kick your ass. Like, you're not gonna beat him; he's gonna kick your ass.
Yeah,
He doesn't need gadgets. He has these hands, and they are rated E for
two guns,
everybody.
dude.
Yeah, and so it's like, he doesn't need these gadgets. He'll just beat the shit out of you. This Robert Pattinson, this Batman is far more meek in comparison, I think, to Christian Bale and Ben Affleck. Ben Affleck's Batman looked like Brock Lesnar. Like, so that Batman never needed a gadget once in his life. Like, he'll cave someone's skull in just off the elbow.
At them, dude. It doesn't matter.
That's what I love about Batfleck. That's what I love about Batfleck. But this is a far more meek Batman in comparison. So it's like, he's probably not going to win every single fist fight. And so he's like, he has to legitimately employ. What I like is like, this Batman is like, yeah, if he doesn't drop this smoke bomb right now, all of these Riddler January 6th militia guys are are gonna clap him. And if he doesn't drop this smoke bomb, he doesn't stand a chance. And that's what I like. That's what I really like. They really they did a really good job organically creating situations for him to use gadgets and for him to kind of show that, that Batman kind of charisma, the things that we recognize in Batman. And so I think action wise, it's easily the best Batman movie. Like the Dark Knight, right? Like I was watching a review of the Dark Knight Rises, like a recent review, like it came out like this year of the Dark Knight Rises, and like the retrospective on it was like the action is not very good in that movie. It's just not. And when you look back on it, it's like, yeah, it's super shaky. Fight choreography is weird. Like this is the complete opposite. Everything, like the car chase scene, like I have never even seen a car chase scene that I liked that as much, but it like that has my favorite shot in the movie. Like at the very end where like he spins out like the rear tires and you see, and it frames the Aston Martin doing the end over end flip. Like that's my favorite shot in the entire movie. And it's a car chase, dude. It's like one of the most cliche sequences you can have in a film. And it was amazing. Like, and the whole sequence of him battling at the top of the arena, like he's flying around on the grappling hook, like he's chaining his moves together. It was, dude, it was awesome. Like the action was so good. Like I never felt like they captured the Arkham combat like on screen. It felt legitimately like I was watching Arkham or like Arkham Asylum Batman run around and kick everybody's ass, and it was really cool.
Yeah, the one thing I'll say too that I like so much is that a lot of it he was raw dogging, because this is year 2 Batman, so he's like, I hope this works. I guess we'll find out right now, or I'm dead. Like that's really cool. That was
it's
great.
Put up or shut up Batman. That is a put up
like,
or shut up Batman.
It's like it probably worked in experiments, but I have never tested this before. But I need it right now, so let's go ahead and just jump off this building.
It's like, again, it's like a new Batman. He's a scrub Batman. Like he's not even like his. In my mind, Batman is someone who understands that like playing Bruce Wayne is something that is massively important, because Bruce Wayne is an incredibly massively influential figure in Gotham. It's like this guy's not even using he's not even using Wayne Enterprises to launder his Batman operation. Like what are you doing, man? Like why are you not trying to pull one over on the Wayne Enterprises accounting people that were pulling up to your house, dude? Like those are people you should really be trying to pull the wool over right now. And he's just like, fuck it, I don't care about that. And it's like, you should care about that. That's Batman shit.
Yeah, well, yeah, he's been ignoring it for so long.
And that's what I really like about it, because like we see like in Batman Begins, in Batman vs Superman, we see these moments of like, oh, he's gonna play a cheeky like billionaire, and it's kind of like that scene has like been there, and it's just been kind of like a, yeah, remember this guy's Bruce Wayne, right? And I think taking that away in this movie was like, is this guy actually like Bruce Wayne? And they give us like little bits of it, of just like kind of like not in the way that you think. Like, he's not there yet. He's not to the point at the point where he's doing the stuff that you saw, the kind of stuff that you saw in Batman Begins, where he's like installing Lucius Fox as the CEO of Wayne Enterprises or whatever. And I really liked that contrast that they showed us. Like this, I think this film showed us a contrast of Batman tropes that we hadn't like yet seen on screen yet, and they were really refreshing.
Yeah, dude, crushing ass at 12 o'clock, kicking ass at 8 o'clock was the Batman we've seen for so long.
Dude, and this guy, like, and I think my favorite contrast actually is in Batman Begins. Like the first night after he goes out, or like and like talks to Jim Gordon or whoever, he wakes up in the morning and immediately starts doing push-ups. Christian
Yeah.
Bale Batman. And in this one, like he wakes up in the morning and he's like going to see Alfred like decoding the cipher. And he's like, fuck, I can't fucking see. Like he's like he has to put sunglasses on because he's like so used to the night and like, he can't like see in the daytime anymore. That was like my favorite part, like favorite little like subtle thing in the movie.
Oh, dude, there's one last thing that I have to mention that I just love. I love attention to detail in video games and movies. So in that last scene where he's talking to the Riddler and they're behind the glass, he's in jail at this point. The camera pans and you could hear his voice differently depending on whose side it was on. It was muffled on Batman's side, and in his side it was clear. Like that's fucking awesome, dude. I was just like, I know it's such a stupid thing, but to me, I'm like, wow, that's a great attention to detail. Like
At the
I
end of
love
the
it.
day, we realize that these are still like movies and that like they're still like no matter like what you can do in a Batman story, like no matter what you're able to accomplish storytelling wise when it comes to Batman, like it's just still a movie and there's still like so many cool things you can do in a movie. And like I feel like as time goes by, we're just gonna see more and more of the small little things that Matt Reeves um, threw into this. I'm gonna sneeze.
All right.
Yes, I think as time goes on, we're only gonna see more of the things that Matt Reeves kind of sprinkled into this movie to make it special. Like
Yeah.
those,
All right.
that's like that's those are those kinds of things. I think this movie is full of them, especially because like again, these like Riddler ciphers, all of that. Like obviously, it's something you kind of gloss over in like while you're watching, but some like there are going to be people who get into the weeds with those and like see just how deep it all goes. You know, like how detailed all of like just how much attention to detail they all had throughout the process.
Yeah, and this movie also takes a really like realistic view. Like the Riddler was a serial killer, which just feels like a very
This is
realistic
Zodiac. It
thing.
was some Zodiac
Yeah.
shit for sure.
So that was pretty cool. I do want to talk about what you think is going to happen next, but do you have any final thoughts on the Batman?
Realism, I think is an interesting concept to play around with in fiction. Like, oh, is this realistic? I don't really care about realism as much as I care about like like if you're creating fiction, I think you should set the world that your story takes place in, and there should just be rules you adhere to within that story. And I think as long as you do that, you're gonna have like a really good, enjoyable story. And I think this is probably one of the first Batman movies that did its own world building, not world building for other movies like like the DCEU, which is not to say that that's bad. It's just not what this was. What this was a very it was self-contained. It was a self-contained story that has its own kind of like themes and messages that it wants to send. And what I saw when I walked away from this movie was a film that really wanted to stay committed to that, and I really hope that they're able to maintain that commitment going forward when they do all of this spin-off and sequel stuff.
All right, so let's talk about that spin-off and sequel stuff. I mean, obviously we have no idea and we won't know for a long time, but
We have some idea.
Where do you see like are they going to pick up right where they left off? Are they going to is the first vision that we see in the next movie going to be the recovered Gotham? Like how do you see that moving forward?
So we have a couple things on like the docket that have been announced regarding this new Gotham. A Gotham PD television show on HBO Max has been confirmed. So Jeffrey Wright will be heading that. It's Jeffrey Wright who played Jim Gordon in the Batman. I love Jeffrey Wright's Jim Gordon. We touched upon it a little bit. He kind of perfectly captured that like Jim Gordon is not a naive person, but when you stand him up next to the Batman, he may seem a little naive in comparison. He's like, oh, we'll never be able to get in the Iceberg Lounge without a warrant, damn it. And it's like the
Yeah.
whole time, it's like Batman is right there. It's like, yeah, like that's what he's for, man. Like,
Yeah.
like that's, and so that those are the kind of like Jim Gordon moments that I live for, and I think he did a really good job accurately portraying that. And so, if they want to do a full series with him trying to rebuild the Gotham police force from being like again, there's things that are set up. You know what I'm saying? Is like if you want to do a Jim Gordon show, there's a lot there of just like him having to weed out the past corruption from the Gotham police force. Like there is a precedent established there for him to like have stuff to do, which I think is really, really cool. He has to like establish the relationship with the Batman further, seeing like how they're going to integrate and work together, like how they're gonna how is he going to work with like, and I believe outside of that, we are also getting more from the Penguin. And so,
Well,
like I
yeah.
said, these two guys, these are two characters that have had their motives set up by the events of the film. And so those are two characters I'm very, very interested to see what they do, because Penguin was primed to obviously become the new crime syndicate boss in Gotham with Carmine Falcone going down. And obviously, Jim Gordon has to rebuild the Gotham police force. So it's like those are the two most kind of prominent non-Batman stories you would want to kind of follow up on. And those are the ones we're getting.
That's awesome. And I did want to say that we didn't talk about it, but we also saw the beginning of Jim Gordon's career. We've always seen the middle of it, or in the case of Batman vs Superman, we didn't see him at all. Like he's not the police commissioner yet. Like he's like building his way up there.
He's very much a lone cop, just like he's very much just a lone cop, just being like,
He's trying to do the right thing.
I'm kind of getting outside help from like this huge criminal. Like they're very much just like two dudes in a mutually beneficial relationship right now. And like I think at some point, like part of like it's some of the best Batman stories, Killing Joke, it's like when Jim Gordon becomes like that fundamental pillar, like he becomes, you know, one of the scales that balances out, you know, in the you know, execution of justice in Gotham. There's a certain point in time where he kind of, his ideology goes up against Batman's, and they have to kind of like I said in the Killing Joke, like if there was ever a reason to kill the Joker, it was in the Killing Joke. And you know, Jim Gordon makes it a point to tell Batman not to do that. And I think like that is kind of like the best, that's the relationship between Batman and Jim Gordon at its best for me, is when they kind of, you know, they both want the same things, but they are in disagreement on how to get to those, how to reach those goals. And I think setting that up, you know, it's obviously important for us to see that these people are like, these two guys are partners. Like these guys work together, they trust each other, you know, to do the work. And so it's cool right now while their goals are aligned, but there's going to be, I'm excited to see the situations that arise that the Batman wants to handle differently from Jim Gordon. And you know, I'm just really excited to see more from the world and these characters that have been created in this specific movie.
For sure. The one thing, last thing I want to mention, I forgot to say it when we were talking about the movie, but I love seeing Robert Pattinson just inject steroids into himself and just go Frank Castle on some dude.
Dude, he legitimately was like, yeah, I'll just like, you telling me this is not a realistic Batman? Like that's something a real life Batman would have when he was just like, when he's down and out, just let me put an adrenaline shot square into my femoral artery. Like, yeah, yeah, exactly. And he almost caves that guy's face in, which is hilarious. And the best
I
part,
thought
like
they
my favorite.
yeah.
So again,
Yeah.
attention to detail. We talked about this earlier. Like, the guy who he ends up caving the face in, when they're at the public memorial, and he overhears a guy talking shit about the renewal fund and saying that Thomas Wayne was a scum sucker who got what he deserved. And he looks up at Bruce Wayne. He's like, you know what I mean? And he's like, kind of recognizes him. And then he finds out, oh, it's Bruce Wayne. At the very end, it's that same guy. You know, like a guy who they had set the precedent for being, you know, dissatisfied with the way things are being done in the city, turns out to be, you know, turns to terrorism. And I just think it's really like cool roundabout like storytelling. It's just the fact that the Batman comes within an inch of beating that guy to death. was really cool. I thought that was awesome that the Batman
Nah,
almost beat that guy to death.
no, that's cool. I wish they would have made his face a little more like caved in, but I guess it is a what was it
I wish that
PG-13
guy's.
movie?
It was a Pete named. I leaned over to you a couple times. I'm like, this movie wants to be R-rated so badly.
I wish it was. I wish it was. Any
Um,
parting words for the Batman?
do we talk about the? Do we talk about Mr. J?
Who?
Do we talk about our new Joker?
Oh, yeah, sure. I mean, he just laughed at me. Maybe there's something more that you know about.
Do you have any? Do you have any kind of expectation for this new iteration of the Joker? Do you have any thoughts on this newest attempt? Because we're like, I feel like there was like a fatigue of like, oh, it's too soon to try and reboot the Joker after Heath Ledger. Like that was the sentiment 8 years later
Yeah.
after Dark Knight when they finally cast Jared Leto. It had been 8 years, and they're like, people were like, oh, they shouldn't be doing this. So it's like, what do you think now?
The Joker. I don't know.
It's
I
the
don't really
it's
care.
the Joker, baby.
It's not Jared Leto. That's all I know, and that's all I care about.
That's all you care about. Do you? So it's like again, like, are you kind of in that vein of just like whoever plays the Joker kind of has to measure up, or is it kind of like a thing of it really is about the story that they implement?
Yeah, I don't really care as long as it's good. I feel like the Joker could be the villain of every Batman movie as long as it's a good movie.
That's true. That's true.
I, I know a lot of people don't feel that way, but that's how I feel.
I do. I agree. I don't think I've ever actually thought about it like that because I think like the Rogues Gallery represents a whole like each different villain represents a different thing as it relates to Batman. But the Joker is kind of a catch-all when it comes to the like when we talk about ideology and like Nolan building the characters up to represent ideologies, uh the Joker is 100% like the opposite ideology to Batman, like like encapsulated and personified. And so, yeah, I think with how dense this world is and with how kind of it presents a lot for as far as like the Joker being able to manipulate multiple kind of factions in this Gotham. So I'm very excited to see like how complex of a story they can weave with it. I think Barry Keoghan is going to be a really, really good Joker. He's a really good actor. I just, if anything, I would kind of like them to get more into the relationship of the Joker and the Batman. I think the Dark Knight did a really, really good job kind of alluding to it of like these guys are kind of essentially opposite sides of the same coin. And I would love to see a Killing Joke, not a full blown Killing Joke movie adaptation, but like a story that plays on that kind of dynamic between the Batman and the Joker of understanding that it's like they're not symbiotic, but it's like it's really hard for the Batman to exist without someone like the Joker. You know,
I wonder if Joker will be the villain of the next movie. I mean,
I
technically
hope
don't
so. It
have
would
to.
be, yeah, you don't have to do it. Like it's they left it open to where it's like, yeah, I would sooner believe that Penguin would be the next villain, you know?
Yeah, we'll have to see.
So I'm like, again, like I think one of the biggest things is like people can't be bored of this. And I think people are really excited to see what comes next from this Gotham. And I think that is the biggest mark of success for this. Is it
Batman
better?
rules.
Is it better than the Dark Knight? Are we putting is it Dark Knight rest in piss finally?
For me, it is. I
I
enjoyed.
think
I was titillated when I saw this movie.
I think it's time we finally put the Dark Knight to rest. Like I think we have been I think the wheels on that movie are finally ready to fall off, you know? Like I think at this point it's like now it's like it was the Batman movie for our generation and now I think it's time for us to finally kind of move on. And this is a worthy Batman to move on to, I think.
It exceeded my expectations because, like I said, I never saw a single trailer for it. So
I
I was
think this
stoked when I
movie
saw
I
it.
think this movie exactly met my expectations. My extremely extremely high expectations. Like I was like this movie is going to give me a complex. This movie's going to make me emo. And once I found out it was 3 hours, I was like, "Oh, this movie's going to have a real plot too." And so everything I kind of like, every box I had for the Batman was checked. Like I'm really, really satisfied. Like it's not a thing of like, oh, I'm losing my shit over it. It's like I feel satisfied. I'm
Feels
really
good,
happy.
man. Yeah, I got what I came for. That's for sure.
Oh yeah, that was great.
Batman punching people, detective stuff,
He was
all that.
fucking fantastic, man. I'm glad we finally got some detective, like some Arkham style Batman.
Oh, it's fantastic. But yeah, that was our review of the Batman. Let us know what you guys think in the comment section down below.
Are you vengeance?
No, I just kidding. I don't know.
No,
But
we're
other than that,
hope.
that's going to do it for today's video, and I'll see you guys next time.